this is how a miter saw works, and just a couple of safety tips as well. Essentially, you just want your material to be nice and tight against the whole back fence and against the bottom to prevent binding. But essentially, you want to start further back, cut down, and push forward. Okay? So I'll just do a simple cut here. Done. Really, all you got to keep in mind is that you don't want to try to start at the front and then move it back, because the blade is cutting like this and it's pushing the material down and forward, right? So if you try to pull it back, it'll bind on and it'll kick back on you, right? So you just push down and go forward. And then next I'll show you how to cut it with a really bowed board. Now I've taken this and found this extra bowed up 2x4 to show you just a few little tips. Now if you want to cut a board this way, this is the way not to cut it, right? And I'll show you why. When you get down, you can see that where my blade comes through, it's up off of the table. So what happens there is when it's cutting through, as it gets closer to the bottom, the wood gets weak, and then gravity will take place and it'll come down and it'll bind on the blade, and then it'll jump back on you really hard, right? So when you're cutting something like that, always just put the bow so that it's touching here, and when you do your cut, then gravity takes its place on the far ends, and this gap opens up and falls away from the blade. Same scenario here. If I was to cut it like this, guaranteed it would bind. See, it's sitting away from the fence right here where the blade is and touching on these ends here. That's not the way to do it. When you want the bow or the crown against the fence. So now it can teeter-totter, but the main part of it is touching right where the blade comes through, and then it won't bind. Let me show you. I'm going to cut off a chunk of each side, the way to do it. So bow against the fence. Okay, and I'll show you the other example. The bow of the 2x4 down, and now it'll just fall away from. And they just fell away. It didn't bind. So that's just a couple things to keep in mind when you're using your miter saw.